All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at, well, home and purpose. How the things we go through make us who we are.
Big topics.
Huge. But we've got a great starting point. This talk between Trevor and Noah, from The Daily Show, and Jay Shetty on his podcast.
Oh, I've seen that one.
It's packed with insights.
Mm.
Trevor's got such a unique way of looking at life, especially given, well, everything he's been through.
Exactly. And he's so open about it, makes it really relatable.
Right. Like when he talks about growing up in South Africa, there was a lot of scarcity, not always having enough food, clothes. He even had to wear his mom's shoes to school once because they couldn't afford new ones.
Wow.
And he connects that to how he orders food now. Always gets way more than he needs. Like this fear of going without is still there.
It's amazing how those early experiences stick with us. Makes you think,
Yeah.
what from our past is still shaping us without us even realizing it?
Totally. It's like echoes.
Yeah.
And then there's this part where Trevor, he gets really passionate about people saying, be grateful for suffering.
Oh, yeah. He pushes back on that hard.
He's like, suffering usually just sucks. Doesn't magically turn you into a diamond or anything.
He's more about seeing the resilience you can build, not glorifying the bad stuff itself, which is refreshing.
Because we hear that silver lining message so much. But Trevor's like, no, sometimes things are just hard.
Makes you think about how we frame those experiences.
It reminds me of, I had this double hernia surgery a while back. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't like life or death either.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm definitely not grateful for the hernia, I am grateful for what I learned recovering. Like, wow, my body's tough.
That's exactly what Trevor's getting at. Acknowledging the rough parts without pretending they were a gift. It's the growth you get out of it that matters.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then, this is where it gets really interesting. Trevor talks about how hard it is to let go of painful stuff. He's almost scared of who he'd be without it.
That fear of the unknown. We cling to what's familiar, even if it hurts.
He even asks himself, if I let go of the pain, do I still love myself?
Yeah.
Like, is that part of his identity now?
It's so human. Who are we without our stories, even the bad ones?
But what Trevor realizes is, letting go doesn't make you less. It's like, it opens up all these possibilities for who you could be.
Like shedding an old skin. You're still you, just ready for new growth.
And speaking of growth, Trevor has this really different idea of what home means. For him, it's not a place, it's familiarity.
Interesting.
He talks about feeling at home in India, which is so different from where he grew up. But he found this sense of belonging there.
Makes you rethink home as a concept. It can be people, experiences, anything that gives you that connection.
Right. Where do we feel that grounding, that sense of belonging? It's a big question.
Definitely. And Trevor, he keeps bringing up how important his friends are, especially doing stand-up, which can be pretty lonely.
Oh, yeah. He uses this analogy, calls them his Horcruxes, like from Harry Potter.
Okay, I'm curious now.
He says they hold different parts of him, so even when he's down, he can come back to life through them.
That's powerful. It's about having that support system, those people who help us through.
Absolutely. Makes you think, who are our Horcruxes? Who do we turn to?
Big question. And then there's this whole thing about Trevor calling himself an idiot.
But it's not what you think. He loves asking questions.
Okay.
Embraces not knowing stuff. It lets him learn without feeling like he has to be the smartest guy in the room.
I think there's a difference between asking questions to prove you're right and asking because you really want to understand.
Exactly. Trevor's all about the second one. He's always curious.
Yeah.
And that lets him see things from all these different angles.
Which is so important, especially today.
It's like he's constantly challenging his own assumptions, his own biases.
Yeah.
And it's refreshing to hear someone be okay with not having all the answers.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that learning is lifelong, and being open to new ideas is how you really grow. Which actually leads to another point Trevor makes about how hard it is to be relatable.
Especially with his public persona. He tells this story about someone totally misjudging him based on his TV image.
We do that all the time, don't we? We see a snapshot of someone and think we know their whole story.
It's a reminder to seek understanding, especially when we encounter different viewpoints or experiences.
Everyone has this whole tapestry of things that make them who they are, and we need to remember that.
And sometimes those stories, they intersect in unexpected ways. Like Trevor and Jay, they find this common ground talking about the jobs we take on early in life.
Like to fit into our families, our communities.
They both talk about these roles we play, offered to compensate for something that's out of balance, like becoming the peacemaker, the caretaker, the overachiever.
And those roles, they can be helpful, but they can also hold us back if we cling to them too long.
It's like carrying this invisible backpack full of expectations and labels. Sometimes you got to unpack, See what's still serving you and what you can let go of.
It's about evolving, refining who we are as we learn and grow. And both Trevor and Jay, they really emphasize self-awareness in that journey.
Which ties back to letting go of those painful experiences. It takes courage to look at those ingrained patterns and ask, is this still me? Is it holding me back from who I want to be?
Exactly. And Trevor, he gives a great example when he talks about having ADHD. He challenges the idea that it's just about not paying attention.
He says it's more like not being able to choose what to focus on. Everything feels equally stimulating.
It's like a radio with all the stations playing at once. The challenge is finding the signal in all that noise.
It's a brilliant way to put it. And he connects it to how we oversimplify mental and emotional experiences. We label things as good or bad without understanding the nuances.
Right. It's about embracing the complexity, seeing things on a spectrum.
Like he uses this analogy of height. Being tall or short, neither is inherently good or bad. You just experience the world differently. You might bump your head more if you're tall, or struggle to reach things if you're short.
It's about adapting to a world that's not always designed for you.
And that's where self-awareness is key. Knowing how your mind works, how your experiences have shaped you, helps you navigate it all with more purpose.
Like having a user manual for yourself. You make conscious choices, respond instead of just reacting, and create a life that's aligned with who you are.
And how does Trevor approach this? He embraces being that idiot, always asking questions, always trying to understand, and never afraid to say, I don't know.
It's a powerful way to learn. He's not trying to confirm what he already believes. He wants to genuinely understand other perspectives, even if they disagree with him.
It's a great reminder that learning takes humility, being open-minded, being willing to step outside your comfort zone. And this leads to this fascinating discussion about relating to others, especially when there's this gap between our public and private selves. Trevor tells a story about someone having a negative reaction to him just because of a preconceived notion based on his public image.
It's something we all experience, isn't it? We make judgments based on limited information. We see a sliver of someone's life and think we have the whole picture.
Yeah, it speaks to a bigger thing, how we make judgments based on like tiny bits of information, what we see on social media, whatever.
Right, we forget everyone has this whole inner world going on, all these experiences that shaped them.
Exactly, and we need to try to understand that instead of jumping to conclusions.
Definitely. And this is where Trevor's background is so interesting. Growing up mixed race in South Africa, he had to navigate different cultures and perspectives all the time, just to fit in.
So he's kind of wired for it now.
Yeah, and it shaped how he approaches understanding others, even down to how he asks questions.
He's got that genuine curiosity, you can tell.
Like he's not trying to agree or disagree, he just wants to get where you're coming from.
To hold those different truths at the same time.
Right.
See the world through different lenses.
Exactly. And that's such a crucial skill today, with everyone so divided. It really is. It's about choosing empathy and understanding, whether it's with family, friends, even strangers online.
Just making that effort to connect, to see past our own little bubbles.
Because when you genuinely try to understand someone, it makes the whole experience richer for both of you.
Absolutely. Then the conversation takes this turn. Trevor and Jay start talking about letting go of identities that don't fit anymore.
Ah, like outgrowing a role you used to play.
Yeah. Jay talks about leaving the monastery, building a new life outside that.
He had to shed some of that monk identity to adapt, but keep the parts that still felt true.
It's like, what does home even mean when it's not a physical place anymore?
Right, it's that internal shift. And Trevor, he talks about feeling this pressure even as a kid to smooth things over between his parents.
He became the peacemaker.
Trying to bring stability to a chaotic situation.
He talks about code switching, like being a different person depending on who he was with.
But eventually you gotta let go of that responsibility. Realize it's not yours to carry.
So many people can relate to that. We take on roles, try to fix things that aren't ours to fix.
Yeah, it's like you're wearing a seatbelt after you've already parked the car. It did its job, but now it's just in the way.
That's a great analogy. We get so used to these roles, we forget we can choose to step out of them.
It's a constant process, right? Figuring out who you are, shedding what doesn't fit anymore.
Trevor even jokes about being consistently mercurial, reliable to those he trusts, but his internal world is always shifting.
Partly because of the ADHD, right? And always questioning everything.
But it's that willingness to embrace all of it, the complexity, that makes him so relatable.
He's not afraid to be vulnerable, show his flaws.
It makes you realize you don't have to be perfect to connect with people.
In fact, it's often those imperfections, those unique quirks that help us find our tribe.
Then Trevor throws out this wild idea. He's like, what if every year 10% of the population randomly had their bank accounts reset to the lowest balance in the world?
Whoa, okay. Big swing.
It's meant to be provocative,
Yeah.
right? Makes you confront your own assumptions about wealth and poverty.
Like, if we all knew we could be in that position at any moment, would we be more compassionate?
More aware of the struggles other people face. It's a reality check for sure.
It challenges us to think about how our choices impact others, especially those who don't have the same advantages.
Such a powerful way to end the conversation. Leaves you with a lot to chew on.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Like, what if that really happened?
Your whole sense of security just gone.
It's more than just empathy, right? It's like, what actions would we take if we knew that could be us?
This whole conversation's been about the roles we play, the ones we choose, and the ones we kind of fall into.
It reminds me of this quote, Viktor Frankl, I think. He said, there's a space between something happening and how we react to it. And that space, that's where we have the power to choose.
Oh, that's good. So it's not about what happens, it's what we do about it.
Oh, exactly. And Trevor and Jay, they're great examples. Both had some tough stuff in their past, but they chose to respond with, like, resilience, curiosity, that desire to understand themselves and the world.
They give us so much to think about. How our past shapes us, the power of letting go, connecting with people. It's a lot.
And being your true self, even when it's scary.
If I had to pick one thing I'm taking away from this, it's the importance of asking questions. Not just about the world, but about ourselves too.
Our assumptions, our biases, those stories we keep telling ourselves.
Gotta stay curious, never stop learning.
So as we wrap up, keep this conversation going. What resonated with you? How can you use these ideas in your own life?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And until next time, keep digging deeper.